Have you ever wondered if a dog could truly sense unseen? If they could feel something in the darkness before anyone else could even notice? If their bond with us was deeper than simple loyalty? Tonight, I want you to listen closely, because this story will make you believe in the unexplainable love and instinct of a dog. It was a quiet night in Maplewood, a small suburban town where houses were lined with glowing porch lights and the air smelled faintly of pine trees. The Johnson family had tucked themselves in for the evening, completely unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Emily Johnson, a gentle mother in her early 30s, kissed her 3-year-old son Noah goodnight, pulling his soft blue blanket up to his chin, humming a lullaby like she always did. Noah had always been a fragile child, born prematurely, with a heart condition that required constant monitoring during his first year of life. But in recent months, the doctors had reassured Emily and her husband David that things were looking better, that Noah was stable. That night, like many before Scout, their golden retriever, lay curled on the floor at the foot of Noah's bed. Scout wasn't just a family dog, he was Noah's shadow, his protector, his silent guardian since the day they brought him home from the shelter. As the house fell into silence, the clock ticking softly in the hallway, Scout's ears twitched. Something in the air changed. He lifted his head slowly, his amber eyes reflecting the faint glow of the nightlight. At first, everything seemed normal, Noah's small chest rising and falling, the gentle rhythm of sleep. But then, Scout's body stiffened. He tilted his head, leaning closer to the crib, nose twitching as if he was catching a scent that wasn't there before. Noah's breathing had shifted. It was shallow, irregular, almost inaudible. Then it stopped. For one long, terrifying moment, it stopped. Scout froze, his entire body tense with an instinct humans would never fully understand. In a split second, he lunged from the foot of the bed, his paws hitting the hardwood floor with urgency. He barked, once, twice, loud and sharp, a sound that sliced through the quiet house like an alarm. Down the hallway, Emily stirred. She blinked in confusion, glancing at the clock. It was to 17 a.m. Scout never barked at night, ever. He was the calmest dog, rarely making a sound unless something was truly wrong. Emily sat up, heart pounding. Then she heard it again, louder this time. Scout barked frantically, a high-pitched, panicked bark she had never heard before. David jumped out of bed, grabbing his phone as they both raced down the hallway. What they saw when they burst into Noah's room stopped their hearts. Scout was standing on his hind legs, paws on the edge of the crib, barking with a desperation that made Emily's stomach drop. Noah was still. His tiny body lay motionless, lips pale, no sound, no breath. "Oh my God, David!" Emily screamed. She scooped Noah into her arms, shaking, tears already streaming down her face. David grabbed his phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers, shouting to the operator that his son wasn't breathing. Emily laid Noah on the floor, just like she had learned in an infant CPR class years ago, while David put the call on speaker. The operator guided them, her voice calm but urgent. "Start compressions." Now, Emily's hands pressed down on Noah's tiny chest, counting aloud through sobs. David hovered, ready to assist, his face pale with fear. And Scout didn't move. He stayed inches away from Noah, his head low, whining softly, as if urging them to hurry, as if he understood the gravity of this moment more than anyone. Minutes felt like hours, the room spinning in a haze of panic and desperation, until suddenly, there was a faint gasp. Then another. Noah coughed weakly. Emily sobbed in relief, holding him close, rocking back and forth on the floor. The paramedics arrived within minutes, whisking Noah away, running checks, giving him oxygen. They stabilized him in the ambulance and told the family they were lucky if Scout hadn't alerted them at that CT moment. It would have been too late. As they rushed to the hospital, Emily couldn't stop looking at Scout. The dog sat in the car beside her, eyes locked on Noah's small frame, as if refusing to look away, even for a second. At the hospital, the doctors explained Noah had experienced a sudden cardiac arrest in his sleep, something rare but possible given his history. Another 5 minutes, and he wouldn't have made it, the doctor said gravely. Emily's legs went weak. and she sank into the chair in Noah's hospital room. Scout lay on the floor beside her, his head resting gently on her foot, a silent reminder that he had saved their son. That night, as Emily watched over Noah in the hospital bed, she realized Scout hadn't just been a pet. He was family, a lifeline, a guardian angel in golden fur. The news of what Scout had done spread quickly through Maplewood. Neighbors brought flowers, the local paper wrote an article about the hero dog who saved a boy's life, and the community rallied around the Johnson family. But for Emily and David, it wasn't about the headlines or the attention. It was about the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog, a bond that had crossed the line between life and death. From that night on, Scout was never just the family dog again. He was the reason Noah was alive. And for Noah, who was too young to remember the details, he would grow up always knowing that his best friend once stood between him and forever. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft hum of monitors and the rhythmic beat that reassured Emily that her son was still here, still breathing, still fighting. Noah lay asleep, his tiny hand wrapped loosely in hers, his face pale but peaceful. Beside her on the cold linoleum floor, Scout lay stretched out, his golden coat illuminated by the dim glow of the room's single lamp. He hadn't left Noah's side since they arrived. He hadn't eaten, he hadn't moved, he hadn't even glanced away. Nurses walked past, whispering to each other about the dog who saved the little boy. One of them, a kind older nurse named Linda, knelt down and scratched behind Scout's ears. "You're a real hero, aren't you?" she said softly, and for a moment, Scout lifted his head and looked at her, but then his gaze went straight back to Noah. Emily sat there in silence, replaying the night over and over in her mind. If Scout hadn't been there, if she hadn't woken up, if she had ignored the barking for just a few more minutes. Her stomach twisted at the thought. David came in with 2 cups of coffee, his face still pale from exhaustion. He handed one to Emily and crouched down beside her. "The doctors say he's stable now," David murmured, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. "They're going to run more tests in the morning, but they think it was a sudden arrhythmia. They said he wouldn't have made it without Scout." Emily looked at the dog lying so still, his chest rising and falling slowly, and she felt tears well up again. "He knew, David." "Before any of us thought he knew." David nodded, swallowing hard. "They always say dogs can sense things. But this was more than that." As dawn crept through the window, painting the walls in soft shades of pink and gold, the hospital came alive with the sounds of morning. Noah stirred in his bed, blinking awake, his little voice hoarse but clear. "Mommy!" Emily's heart skipped a beat. She leaned over, brushing his cheek. "I'm here, baby." "I'm right here." Noah glanced around the room with sleepy eyes until they landed on Scout. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "Scout," he whispered. Scout's ears perked up, and he lifted his head, inching closer to the bed. Noah reached out his tiny hand, resting it gently on Scout's fur. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Emily couldn't stop the tears streaming down her face. That simple touch meant everything. It meant he was awake. It meant he was alive. The next few days were a blur of tests, consultations, and cautious optimism. The doctors explained Noah's heart condition had always been unpredictable. He'd outgrown the most critical stage, but there was always a small risk of an episode like this. They recommended a minor surgical procedure to implant a device that would regulate his heartbeat. It wasn't invasive, they assured Emily and David, but it would give them peace of mind. Emily agreed immediately. Anything to keep Noah safe. Through it all, Scout stayed at the hospital. The staff made special arrangements for him to remain in the room because they saw how calm Noah was with him there. When doctors came in with needles or monitors, Noah would hold Scout's ear and stay still, no tears, no fear. Scout's presence was like a blanket of safety draped over the little boy. Meanwhile, word about Scout spread beyond the town. A local news station came to the hospital, asking to interview the family. Emily was hesitant, but David convinced her. "Maybe it'll help someone else," he said. Maybe it'll remind people how much dogs mean to us. The interview aired that night, showing Scout lying beside Noah's hospital bed, the boy's small hand resting on the dog's back. The footage melted hearts across the state. Messages poured in from strangers. Some sent donations for Noah's medical care. Others sent letters and cards for Scout. A local pet store even offered a lifetime supply of food and toys for the hero dog. Back at home, the Johnsons' neighbors decorated their front porch with balloons and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Noah and Scout." They didn't even realize yet how this experience had shifted something deep within their community. People started checking on their neighbors more. Families with pets felt a renewed sense of gratitude for their animals. Kids from Noah's daycare made drawings of him and Scout, their crayons capturing the bright golden fur and Noah's big blue eyes. It was like this one act of instinct, this one moment of a dog barking at just the right time, had rippled outwards and reminded everyone what it meant to care for one another. When Noah was finally cleared to go home, Emily carried him through the hospital doors, feeling the cool breeze on her face for the first time in days. Scout trotted ahead, tail wagging gently, his eyes scanning everything like he was still on duty. As they walked down their driveway, they saw the neighbors waiting, clapping softly. Holding welcome signs. Noah, still tired but smiling, waved from Emily's arms. Scout stopped in the yard and looked back at Noah, as if making sure he was really home, really safe. Emily knelt down in the grass, setting Noah beside Scout. "You saved him," she whispered to the dog. "You saved all of us." That night, when the house was finally quiet again, Emily sat on the couch with a warm cup of tea, watching Noah sleep peacefully in the baby monitor. Scout lay beside the crib once more, exactly where he had been that night, his head on his paws, eyes half closed but still alert. David came in and sat beside her. "You know," he said softly, "I don't think this was just instinct. I think Scout loves him so much, he just knew." Emily nodded, her heart full. "It's like he felt it in his soul," she whispered. And for the first time since that terrifying night, she felt something she hadn't felt in days. She felt safe, but little did they know, this was just the beginning of Scout's journey with Noah, because what he did that night wasn't just about saving a life. It was the first of many moments where he would stand between Noah and danger, between fear and hope. And as the days unfolded, the bond between them would only grow stronger, becoming something that no one could explain but everyone could feel. The morning sun slipped through the curtains, filling Noah's room with a soft, golden light that seemed to hum with quiet gratitude. It was the first day back home, and everything felt different. The air felt lighter, but it also carried a kind of weight, like everyone in the house was aware of how close they had come to losing something precious. Noah was propped up in his bed, a gentle smile on his face as Emily sat beside him reading one of his favorite storybooks, her voice warm but occasionally trembling when she glanced down at him. And remembered the terror of that night. Scout lay across the foot of the bed, his head resting near Noah's feet, his amber eyes always shifting between Emily and the boy, as if making sure both were safe. David stood in the doorway, holding his coffee, silently watching the scene, overwhelmed by how peaceful it seemed now compared to the chaos just days before. In the living room, the table was stacked with cards and small gifts from neighbors and even strangers who had heard the story on the news, little reminders that sometimes even the darkest nights can lead to unexpected kindness from the world outside. As the days passed, Noah grew stronger. The doctors scheduled his procedure for the following week, assuring Emily and David that it would help regulate his heartbeat and prevent future episodes. Emily was nervous, but every time she looked at Scout, who had become even more protective and attentive, she found a strange sense of calm. It was as if the dog was silently promising her that he wouldn't let anything bad happen. Scout followed Noah everywhere now. When Noah sat on the porch to feel the afternoon breeze, Scout lay at his side. When Noah napped, Scout would curl up at the foot of the bed. At night, when everyone else in the house slept, Scout would stay awake just a little longer, pacing quietly around Noah's room, pausing every now and then to check the soft rise and fall of his chest. One afternoon, Emily decided they needed a break from the heaviness. She brought out a picnic blanket in the backyard, laying out sandwiches, juice boxes, and Noah's favorite cookies. Noah, bundled up in a little sweater, laughed softly as Scout tried to nudge a ball toward him with his nose. It wasn't much, but it was the first time Noah laughed since the hospital. Emily felt tears sting her eyes as she listened to that sound. She leaned over and kissed his hair, whispering, "You're going to be okay, sweetheart," Scout barked once, almost like he was agreeing. They all sat in the grass, breathing in the cool air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, it didn't feel like they were living in the shadow of fear. Later that week, they visited the cardiologist for final pre-op tests. Scout came along, sitting patiently in the waiting room while Noah clutched his soft fur for comfort. The doctor smiled when he saw them. "I've been hearing about this brave dog," he said. "I think he deserves a medal." Noah looked up shyly and whispered, "He already has one." In my heart, Emily's chest tightened with emotion, and she realized that while medicine and doctors were vital, sometimes the greatest healing came from love and connection that couldn't be measured on any chart. That night, the family gathered for dinner, trying to keep the mood light. David cooked Noah's favorite spaghetti, and Scout sat nearby, occasionally resting his head on Noah's lap. As they ate, Emily asked softly, "Do you remember anything from that night?" "No," the boy paused, looking down at his plate, then glanced at Scout. "I remember it was really dark, and I felt sleepy, and then I heard Scout," he said quietly. "He was calling me. Not with words, but I just knew he didn't want me to go." Emily's heart ached, but she nodded, brushing his hair back. "Scout saved you," she whispered. "He knew you needed help." Noah smiled faintly. "He's my guardian." The following morning, Emily found Scout sitting by the front door, alert and still. He seemed to sense something coming, something important. When they arrived at the hospital for the procedure, the nurses explained that Scout couldn't go into the surgical area, but they let him stay in the family waiting room. Emily stayed with Noah until the moment he was wheeled into the operating room, holding his hand and promising she'd be there when he woke up. As the doors closed, Emily turned and saw Scout staring at her with deep, steady eyes, and in that moment, she felt like he was telling her to stay strong. Hours passed in the waiting room. David paced back and forth. Emily sat clutching her hands, and Scout lay motionless but tense, as if he too was holding his breath. Finally, the surgeon came out, smiling gently. The procedure went well. "Noah's heart is stable. He's going to be fine." Relief washed over Emily like a wave. She dropped her head into her hands, sobbing quietly, while David hugged her tightly. Scout stood, tail wagging softly, and for the first time all day, he relaxed. When Noah finally woke up in the recovery room, the first thing he saw was Scout's face peeking through the doorway. His eyes lit up, and he whispered, "Scout." The dog moved closer, gently resting his head on the bed. Noah smiled, his voice weak but full of love. "I'm okay now." Emily looked at Scout and whispered, "We're okay because of you." As they drove home days later, the air felt clearer. The fear that had once filled their home seemed to have been replaced with something stronger, a bond that nothing could break. Scout didn't just save Noah's life that night. He gave the entire family a second chance to see how fragile, beautiful, and deeply connected life could be. But what they didn't realize was that this experience was only the start of an even deeper journey between Noah and Scout, one that would continue to unfold in ways none of them could yet imagine. Weeks passed since Noah's surgery, and life in the little house on Willow Lane slowly returned to a new kind of normal, one that carried the quiet echo of gratitude in every small moment. Mornings were filled with soft sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, Emily making pancakes while Noah sat at the table coloring, his face healthier now, his cheeks less pale. Scout, always nearby, lay at Noah's feet, his ears twitching at every sound, as if still guarding him even though the danger had passed. David had started working fewer hours at the construction site, determined never to miss another dinner or bedtime story. And though the shadow of that terrifying night lingered in their minds, it felt more like a reminder now than a fear, a reminder that life could change in a single heartbeat, and that love could truly save you when nothing else could. One Saturday afternoon, Emily decided they needed a small celebration, not a big one, but just something to honor how far they'd come. She baked a simple chocolate cake, and they gathered in the living room. Noah held a handmade card for Scout, covered in crayon hearts and little pawprints he had drawn himself. In the card, Noah had written in his small, careful handwriting, "To my hero, who stayed when I was almost gone." When he gave it to Scout, the dog tilted his head as if he understood, then gently licked Noah's hand. Emily felt her throat tighten as she watched them. It wasn't just a dog and a boy anymore, it was a bond that went beyond words. But what truly surprised Emily was how Noah seemed different now. Before the incident, he had been shy and quiet, sometimes nervous about trying new things. But since that night, he carried a calm bravery, like he had seen how fragile life was and decided not to waste it. He started painting with more confidence, smiling more, asking questions about the world. One day he told Emily, "I want to help animals like Scout when I grow up," and she realized that the dog hadn't just saved his life, he had inspired it. Scout, too, seemed changed. He was still playful, still gentle, but there was a wisdom in his eyes now, like he knew he had done something far greater than any trick or command. Whenever visitors came by, they would point to Scout and say, "That's the dog from the news, the one who saved the boy." And though Scout didn't care for the attention, he would always quietly find Noah and sit beside him, like reminding everyone that he didn't do it for praise, he did it because that was his family, his boy, his purpose. Months later, the local community organized a small ceremony in the park. It wasn't fancy, just neighbors, friends, and a few officials who had heard about the story. They handed Scout a shiny medal attached to a blue ribbon, calling him a true hometown hero. Noah proudly clipped it to Scout's collar, hugging him tightly in front of everyone. Cameras flashed, people clapped, and Scout just sat there calmly, tail wagging softly, eyes only focused on Noah. That evening, back home, the family sat on the porch watching the sunset. Emily sipped her tea while David strummed a quiet tune on his guitar. Noah rested his head against Scout's back, running his small fingers through the dog's fur. "Mom," Noah whispered, "do you think Scout knew that my heart stopped that night?" Emily smiled gently, her eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetheart, I think he felt it, and he knew he had to save you." Noah smiled and whispered into Scout's ear, "Thank you for hearing me even when I couldn't say a word." Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that night, but it became more intentional. The family spent more time together, more moments outside under the trees, more laughter over simple things. Noah's health stayed stable, the doctors were optimistic, and Scout remained his constant companion, his silent protector, his best friend. Sometimes Emily would wake up in the middle of the night and see Scout lying awake in Noah's room, his head resting on his paws, his gaze fixed softly on the boy sleeping soundly. It was like Scout still carried that same quiet promise, "I'm here, I'll always be here." And while the story of the boy whose heart stopped and the dog who saved him spread far and wide, touching strangers they would never meet, the real miracle lived quietly in that little house. It wasn't about the headlines, or the medal, or the ceremony. It was about a boy who got another chance to live, a family who learned just how deep love can run, and a dog who reminded them all that sometimes the truest heroes don't need words, they just need to be there exactly when you need them most.